David Campbell stared at the grotesque creature before him, his stomach churning. This was the alien he had to marry to save humanity from annihilation. The Rizian woman, Alara, stood motionless. Her mottled gray skin hung in loose folds, asymmetrical facial features twisted in what might have been a smile. The acrid stench emanating from her made David's eyes water. He forced himself to breathe through his mouth, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes watching him. Human and Rizian dignitaries filled the space station's grand hall, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The fate of two civilizations hung on this moment. David straightened his formal uniform, the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. As Earth's chosen diplomat, he had to go through with this farce of a marriage. The alternative was interstellar war, a conflict humanity couldn't hope to win against the technologically superior Rizians. The officiant, a tall, spindly alien, raised its arms. "We gather here to unite these two beings in the name of peace." David's jaw clenched as he repeated the vows, his voice steady despite the revulsion coursing through him. Alara's guttural responses sent shivers down his spine. When the time came to seal their union with a kiss, he hesitated, then quickly pecked her rough cheek. Applause filled the hall, but David caught the sneers and pitying glances from both sides. He had become a laughing stock, the human who married the ugliest Rizian in the galaxy. As the reception began, David retreated to a corner, avoiding his new wife as much as protocol allowed. He focused on shaking hands and making small talk with diplomats, all while keeping Alara in his peripheral vision. "Congratulations, Ambassador Campbell," a fellow human said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Your sacrifice won't be forgotten." David nodded stiffly, watching as Alara lumbered across the room. Despite her appearance, she moved with a certain grace. He frowned, noticing for the first time the intelligence shining in her mismatched eyes. The year ahead loomed before him. 365 days living with this creature on the space station, a symbol of unity between their species. David steeled himself for the challenge, reminding himself of the billions of lives depending on this alliance. As the night wore on, David found himself observing Alara more closely. She conversed easily with dignitaries from both sides, her melodious voice at odds with her appearance. When she laughed at a Rizian joke, the sound was surprisingly pleasant. David shook his head, banishing such thoughts. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. This was a political arrangement, nothing more. He would fulfill his duty to Earth, no matter the personal cost. Yet as he watched Alara navigate the complex social waters of the reception, David couldn't help but wonder if there was more to his alien bride than met the eye. Little did he know, the true test of his character and the fate of both their worlds was about to begin. As the reception wound down, David found himself alone with Alara on a secluded observation deck. The vastness of space stretched before them, countless stars twinkling against the inky blackness. He cleared his throat, searching for something to say to break the awkward silence. "You handled yourself well tonight," he managed, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Alara turned to face him, her mismatched eyes studying him intently. "As did you, Ambassador Campbell. I know this isn't easy for you." Before David could respond, Alara's form began to shimmer and change. In a matter of seconds, the grotesque creature he had married was gone, replaced by a stunningly beautiful humanoid woman with iridescent skin and flowing silver hair. David stumbled backward, his mouth agape. "What? How?" Alara's melodious voice took on a sad note. "This is my true form, David. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was necessary to test your character and commitment to the peace treaty." The revelation hit David like a physical blow. His mind reeled as he tried to process this new information. Before he could gather his thoughts, alarms blared throughout the station. "Attention all personnel," a voice boomed over the intercom. "Security breach detected. All diplomats report to the main conference room immediately." David and Alara exchanged a worried glance before rushing to the designated area. As they entered the conference room, they were met with chaos. Human and Rizian diplomats shouted accusations at each other, their faces contorted with anger and fear. Ambassador Marcus Stern, the head of the human delegation, spotted David and stormed over. "Did you know about this, Campbell? Did you know these?" Creatures could change their appearance at will? Before David could answer, High Counselor Zaxalor of the Rizians interjected, his voice booming over the din. Our shape-shifting abilities are a natural part of who we are. It is not a weapon or a threat to be feared. The room erupted into even louder arguments. David watched helplessly as years of careful diplomacy threatened to unravel in minutes. He caught sight of Alara, now back in her initial form, being cornered by a group of hostile human diplomats. Acting on instinct, David pushed through the crowd and placed himself between Alara and the angry humans. "Everyone, please!" he shouted, raising his hands for silence. "We can't let fear and misunderstanding destroy everything we've worked for." The room quieted, all eyes turning to David. He took a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. "I propose we approach this scientifically. Let's study the Rizians' abilities openly and transparently. It's the only way to build trust between our species." To David's surprise, both Ambassador Stern and High Counselor Zaxalor nodded in agreement. Within hours, plans were set in motion for a joint human-Rizian research initiative. Over the next few weeks, the space station was transformed into a hub of scientific activity. Dr. Emily Perry, Earth's leading xenobiologist, arrived to head the human research team. Her Rizian counterpart, Chief Scientist Nix Era, brought a team of their most respected minds. David watched in fascination as Alara volunteered for a series of experiments and demonstrations. She shape-shifted into various forms, adapting to extreme environments in sealed chambers that simulated everything from the vacuum of space to the crushing pressures of gas giant atmospheres. During one particularly impressive demonstration, Alara transformed her arm into a complex medical instrument, showcasing the potential for Rizian abilities in the field of medicine. David found himself captivated not just by the scientific implications, but by Alara's unwavering commitment to fostering understanding between their species. As the days passed, David spent more time with Alara outside of the official demonstrations. He discovered a keen intelligence and dry wit behind her ever-changing exterior. Despite his initial revulsion, he found himself looking forward to their conversations. However, not everyone was convinced by the scientific approach. Whispers of conspiracy began to circulate among some of the human diplomats. David overheard snippets of conversation about infiltrators and body snatchers. The situation came to a head during a routine briefing. Colonel James Harper, a hardline military attaché, stood up and pointed an accusing finger at the Rizian delegation. "How do we know they haven't already replaced key members of our government? For all we know, half the people in this room could be Rizian spies." The room erupted into shouts and accusations once again. David watched in dismay as weeks of progress threatened to evaporate in an instant. He caught Alara's eye across the room, seeing his own concern mirrored in her gaze. In that moment, David realized that scientific evidence alone wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap between their species. They needed something more personal, more human, or perhaps more Rizian. As the shouting continued around him, David's mind raced, searching for a way to demonstrate the potential for true harmony between humans and Rizians. With time running out and the threat of interstellar war looming once again, David knew he had to act fast. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. It was time to confront his own lingering prejudices and fully embrace his role as a bridge between two worlds. David took a deep breath, his mind racing as he searched for a solution to the chaos unfolding around him. The scientific approach had failed to bridge the gap between humans and Rizians. He needed something more profound, something that would speak to both species on a deeper level. "Ambassador Stern, High Counselor Zaxalor," David called out, raising his voice above the din. "May I have a word with you both in private?" The two leaders exchanged wary glances before nodding their assent. They followed David to a small conference room adjacent to the main hall. Once inside, David laid out his proposal. "We've been approaching this all wrong. Science alone can't overcome centuries of ingrained fears and prejudices. What we need is a cultural exchange, a series of events that will allow our people to truly understand and appreciate one another." Ambassador Stern frowned. "What exactly did you have in mind, Campbell?" David outlined his plan for a grand gala dinner, featuring cuisine from both worlds, followed by workshops and demonstrations showcasing the unique abilities and technologies of both species. High Counselor Zaxeler's eyes widened with interest. An intriguing proposal, Ambassador Campbell, but how do we ensure this doesn't devolve into another spectacle of mistrust? By leading by example, David replied firmly. He turned to face the human ambassador, starting with me. The gala dinner was a sight to behold. The space station's largest hall had been transformed into a dazzling array of human and Rizian culinary delights. Colorful earth fruits sat alongside pulsating Rizian delicacies. The air was filled with a cacophony of familiar and alien aromas. As the attendees settled into their seats, David stood up, his heart pounding. He cleared his throat, drawing all eyes to him. Before we begin this feast, I have something important to say, he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. I owe you all, but especially the Rizian people, an apology. A hush fell over the room. Even the ever-present hum of the space station seemed to quiet. When I first met Alara, my wife, David continued, glancing at her, I reacted with disgust and prejudice. I allowed my fear of the unknown to cloud my judgment and my humanity. I was wrong, and I am deeply sorry. He turned to face Alara directly. You have shown me nothing but patience, kindness, and wisdom. I am committed to overcoming my prejudices and truly getting to know you, and all Rizians, for who you are, not what you look like. As David sat down, the room erupted in applause. He caught Alara's eye and saw a glimmer of something he hadn't noticed before, respect and perhaps even affection. The dinner proved to be a rousing success, with humans and Rizians alike sampling each other's cuisines with curiosity and enthusiasm. The atmosphere was lighter than it had been in weeks, filled with laughter and animated conversation. Riding the wave of goodwill, David and Alara threw themselves into organizing the cultural exchange events. Over the next few days, the space station buzzed with activity as humans and Rizians shared their knowledge and abilities. In one memorable demonstration, a team of human engineers presented their latest advancements in terraforming technology. The Rizians watched in awe as holographic simulations showed barren planets transformed into lush, habitable worlds. Not to be outdone, Rizian scientists showcased the medical applications of their shape-shifting abilities. David watched in fascination as a Rizian doctor transformed her hand into a complex surgical tool, demonstrating how they could perform intricate procedures without the need for external instruments. As the cultural exchange progressed, David noticed a shift in the atmosphere on the station. The tension that had been ever-present since his arrival began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. However, the true test came when Alara approached David with a proposal of her own. There is a traditional Rizian bonding ritual, she explained, her mismatched eyes intense. It allows participants to share memories and emotions. I believe if we were to undergo this ritual and broadcast it to both our peoples, it could be a powerful symbol of unity. David hesitated, the idea of such intimate contact with an alien being still unsettling, but he recognized the potential impact of such a gesture. I'll do it, he said, surprising himself with his own conviction. The day of the ritual arrived, and David found himself standing before Alara in a chamber filled with softly glowing crystals. Camera drones hovered silently around them, ready to broadcast the event to billions of humans and Rizians. As the ritual began, David felt a strange tingling sensation in his mind. Suddenly, he was awash in a flood of memories and emotions. Alara's memories and emotions. He saw their first meeting through her eyes, felt the sting of his revulsion, and the deep sadness it had caused her. He experienced her willpower to forge peace between their species, her hope for a future of cooperation and understanding. Simultaneously, Alara was experiencing David's memories. She saw the beauty of Earth, felt his genuine desire for peace, and understood the fear and prejudice that had initially driven his actions. As the ritual concluded, David and Alara stood gazing at each other, tears streaming down both their faces. The profound connection they now shared was visible to all who watched, a powerful testament to the potential for understanding between their species. But even as hope blossomed, a shadow loomed. In a darkened corner of the station, Colonel James Harper watched the broadcast with narrowed eyes, his fists clenched in anger. "This has gone too far," he growled to his assembled followers. "It's time we took matters into our own hands." As David and Alara basked in the afterglow of the ritual, unaware of the gathering storm, the future of human-Rizian relations hung in the balance. The next move would be critical, and the consequences could change the course of both their civilizations forever. As the glow of the bonding ritual faded, David and Alara exchanged a meaningful glance. The profound connection they now shared had opened their eyes to new possibilities, but it had also crystallized the urgency of their mission. They knew they had to act quickly to prevent the fragile peace from unraveling. "We need to do more," David whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the station. "Words and rituals aren't enough. We need to show them, not tell them." Alara nodded, her mismatched eyes gleaming with understanding. "I have an idea," she said, "but it's risky. We'll be breaking every protocol in the book." David listened intently as Alara outlined her plan. His eyes widened as he grasped the audacity of what she was proposing. "Impersonating the delegates? That's insane. It could destroy everything if we're caught." "It's the only way," Alara insisted. "We need to be in the room, guiding the conversations, mediating the conflicts. It's the fastest way to build trust and understanding." After a moment of hesitation, David nodded. "You're right. Let's do it." Over the next few days, David and Alara worked tirelessly to prepare. David coached Alara on the mannerisms and speech patterns of Ambassador Stern and High Counselor Zaxalor, while Alara practiced her transformations, perfecting every detail down to the tiniest wrinkle. Their first test came during a closed-door meeting between human and Rizian economic advisors. Alara, disguised as Ambassador Stern, smoothly guided the conversation towards mutually beneficial trade agreements. David, watching from the sidelines, marveled at her ability to capture Stern's essence while subtly steering the discussion in a more cooperative direction. As they gained confidence, they began to take on more challenging impersonations. During a tense security briefing, Alara as Zaxalor defused a heated argument about planetary defense systems with a well-timed joke that had both sides chuckling and agreeing to compromise. But their success came at a cost. The constant shape-shifting was taking a toll on Alara. David noticed her wincing in pain when she thought no one was looking, and her transformations were becoming slower and less precise. "Are you sure you're okay?" David asked one evening, his voice infused with concern. Alara managed a weak smile. "I'm fine. This is too important to stop now." Their efforts seemed to be paying off. The atmosphere on the station was noticeably improving, with humans and Rizians beginning to mingle more freely in common areas. But beneath the surface, darker currents were stirring. During one of her impersonations as High Counselor Zaxalor, Alara stumbled upon a disturbing conversation. Sub-Counselor Vexmar, a hardline Rizian official, was speaking in hushed tones with two other delegates. "The humans will never truly accept us," Vexmar hissed. "We need to force their hand. A small attack on their quarters, made to look like a human error. It would give us the justification we need for a full-scale invasion of Earth." Alara struggled to maintain her composure as she listened, her heart racing. She excused herself as quickly as she could without arousing suspicion and rushed to find David. Meanwhile, David had made a shocking discovery of his own. While sifting through classified communications as part of their plan, he had uncovered evidence of Colonel Harper's secret project. The colonel had assembled a team of scientists, led by Dr. Victor Reeves, with the goal of replicating Rizian shape-shifting abilities for military use. When David and Alara reconvened to share their findings, the gravity of the situation hit them like a physical blow. They had uncovered not one, but two plots that threatened to destroy everything they had worked for. "We need to act fast," David said, pacing the small room they used for their clandestine meetings. "But we can't expose these plots without revealing our own deception." Alara nodded, her form flickering slightly as she struggled to maintain her default appearance. "We need allies, someone who can act on this information without implicating us." David's mind raced, considering their options. Suddenly, he snapped his fingers. "Lieutenant Perry, she's been racked with guilt since the shooting incident. If we approach her the right way, she might be willing to help expose Harper's plot. With a plan taking shape, David sought out Lieutenant Sarah Perry. He found her in the station's gym, furiously attacking a punching bag. "Lieutenant," David called out, approaching cautiously. "I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Colonel Harper." Perry stopped mid-punch, her eyes narrowing. "What about him?" David took a deep breath and laid out what he knew about Harper's illegal activities. He watched as Perry's expression shifted from skepticism to shock, and finally to drive. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice hard with willpower. With Perry's help, David set up a sting operation to catch Harper and Dr. Reeves in the act. Using the access codes Perry provided, they monitored Harper's communications and tracked the movements of his team. The plan worked perfectly. Station security, acting on an anonymous tip, caught Harper and Reeves red-handed as they attempted to steal Rizian biological samples from the research lab. The arrest sent shockwaves through the human delegation, effectively neutralizing the extremist threat and demonstrating to the Rizians that the human leadership was committed to honoring the peace agreement. But even as they celebrated this victory, Alara was pushing herself to the limit. Disguised once again as High Counselor Zaxalor, she called an emergency meeting of the Rizian delegation. With every ounce of authority she could muster, she exposed Vexmar's plot to the assembled officials. The revelation caused an uproar. Rizian delegates shouted and argued, their forms shifting in agitation. In the chaos, Vexmar and his supporters were quickly isolated and detained by loyal Rizian security personnel. As the dust settled, David and Alara realized they had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The exposure of extremist elements on both sides had cleared the air, creating a new openness and commitment to the peace process. But their triumph was short-lived. As they met in private to discuss their next steps, Alara suddenly collapsed, her body struggling to maintain its cohesion. David watched in horror as her form flickered and distorted. "Alara!" he cried out, catching her as she fell. Without a second thought, he scooped her up in his arms and raced towards the medical bay, praying they weren't too late. As alarms blared and medical staff rushed to assist, David found himself facing a new and terrifying challenge. He had navigated the complexities of interstellar diplomacy, but now he was confronted with something far more personal and frightening. As he watched Dr. Emily Perry and Chief Scientist Nixara working frantically to stabilize Alara's condition, David realized that the success of their mission and the future of human-Rizian relations might come at a cost he wasn't prepared to pay. The medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity as Dr. Emily Perry and Chief Scientist Nixara worked tirelessly to stabilize Alara's fluctuating form. David paced anxiously, his heart pounding as he watched the monitors flicker with alarming irregularity. "Her cellular structure is destabilizing," Dr. Perry announced, her voice tense. "We need to find a way to anchor her DNA sequence." Nixara's tentacles whipped through the air as she manipulated complex holographic displays. "I've never seen degradation this severe. The prolonged shape-shifting has compromised her genetic integrity." Hours passed in a blur of medical jargon and desperate measures. Finally, Dr. Perry stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow. "She's stable for now, but we need help, someone who specializes in xenobiology." As if on cue, the medical bay doors slid open, revealing a tall, silver-haired man with piercing green eyes. "Dr. Marcus Blackwood," he announced, striding purposefully into the room. "I hear you have a unique case on your hands." David watched as Dr. Blackwood immersed himself in Alara's case, poring over data and conducting intricate tests. The xenobiologist's expertise proved invaluable, providing insights that bridged the gap between human and Rizian biology. Days turned into weeks as Alara slowly recovered. David spent every available moment by her side, watching as her form gradually solidified. When she finally opened her eyes, the relief that washed over him was palpable. "David," she whispered, her voice weak but steady. "What happened?" Before he could respond, the medical bay doors hissed open once more. Ambassador Stern and High Counselor Zaxalor entered, their faces a mix of concern and awe-inspiring anger. "You have a lot of explaining to do," Stern growled, his eyes narrowing as he looked from David to Alara. The next few hours were a whirlwind of accusations, explanations, and heated debates. David and Alara laid bare the extent of their deception, detailing the plots they had uncovered and the measures they had taken to preserve peace. To their surprise, as the full picture emerged, the anger in Stern and Zaxalor's eyes gradually gave way to grudging respect. "What you did was reckless, unauthorized, and a complete violation of protocol," Zaxalor said, his form rippling with nearly unleashed emotion. "It was also effective." Stern nodded, his stern expression softening slightly. "You took extreme risks to uncover threats that could have derailed everything we've worked for. While we can't condone your methods, we can't ignore the results either." The negotiations resumed with a new sense of purpose and transparency. David found himself thrust into the center of diplomatic proceedings, his unique perspective valued by both sides. As Alara continued her recovery under Dr. Blackwood's care, David wrestled with the challenge of bridging the gap between human and Rysian interests. One evening, as he sat poring over proposals in Alara's medical room, an idea struck him. He looked up at Alara, his eyes bright with excitement. "What if we showed them what we can achieve together?" he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Not just in negotiations, but out there in the stars." Alara tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" David outlined his vision, a joint human-Rysian space exploration mission to a newly discovered potentially habitable planet. As he spoke, Alara's eyes widened with excitement. The proposal sent shockwaves through both delegations. It was bold, ambitious, and not without risk. But as the details were fleshed out, enthusiasm began to build. Humans offered their advanced propulsion systems and terraforming technology, while Rysians proposed using their shape-shifting abilities for adaptive exploration and environmental analysis. Dr. Blackwood, who had become an integral part of the station's scientific community, threw himself into the project with gusto. His work led to the development of a revolutionary environmental suit that incorporated Rysian bioadaptive principles, allowing for unprecedented flexibility in hostile environments. As preparations for the mission ramped up, David found himself appointed as the diplomatic liaison, coordinating between human and Rysian team members. Alara, having made a full recovery thanks to Dr. Blackwood's treatments, volunteered as the lead Rysian specialist. The station buzzed with activity as the launch date approached. Human and Rysian engineers worked side by side, their combined expertise leading to breakthroughs that would have been impossible for either species alone. However, not everyone was pleased with this new collaboration. One evening, as David was conducting a final inspection of the mission's spacecraft, alarms blared throughout the hangar. Security footage revealed a disturbing sight, a figure that shifted between human and Rysian forms, planting explosive devices on the ship's hull. Panic spread through the station as fears of shapeshifter infiltration resurfaced. David and Alara found themselves racing against time, not only to save the mission but to prevent the fragile peace from unraveling. Their investigation led them down a twisted path of false leads and hidden agendas. As they dug deeper, a shocking truth emerged. The saboteur was neither human nor Rysian, but a member of a third faction, interspecies weapons dealers who profited from conflict between the two races. This revelation galvanized both humans and Rysians. Security forces from both species joined forces, launching a series of coordinated raids on hidden bases throughout the station. During one particularly intense operation, David found himself shielding a Rysian officer from an explosion, his actions earning him newfound respect from the Rysian security forces. As the dust settled and the weapons dealers were rounded up, a new sense of unity permeated the station. The successful joint operation had demonstrated the potential of human-Rysian cooperation in a way that no diplomatic negotiation could have achieved. With revitalized commitment, work on the exploration mission resumed. The spacecraft, now repaired and reinforced, stood as a symbol of what could be accomplished when two species put aside their differences and worked together. As the launch date drew near, David and Alara found themselves at the heart of final preparations. Their relationship, once a source of controversy, now served as a living example of human-Rysian cooperation. Yet challenges remained. Some hardliners on both sides still viewed the mission with suspicion, seeing it as a potential security risk. And Dr. Blackwood's latest research had revealed concerning long-term health risks for Rizians, who frequently use their shape-shifting abilities, casting a shadow over Alara's role in the mission. As David stood on the observation deck, watching teams of humans and Rizians scurry over the gleaming surface of the spacecraft, he knew that the true test lay ahead. The success of this mission would not only open up new frontiers in space exploration, but could also chart the course for the future of human-Rizian relations. With Alara by his side, he faced the challenges ahead, knowing that each obstacle overcome brought them one step closer to a future where humans and Rizians could stand together as equals, united in their quest to explore the stars. David's gaze shifted from the gleaming spacecraft to Alara, his brow furrowing with concern. The excitement of impending launch was overshadowed by a growing unease. "Alara, we need to talk," he said, guiding her to a quiet corner of the observation deck. "Dr. Blackwood's research, it's not good news." Alara's form rippled slightly, a sign of her apprehension. What did he find? David took a deep breath. The long-term effects of shape-shifting on Rizian biology are more severe than we thought. Frequent use can lead to cellular instability and potentially life-threatening conditions. Alara's eyes widened, her form flickering momentarily. "But the mission, my role requires extensive shape-shifting. What does this mean for my participation?" Before David could respond, an alert chimed on his comm device. Dr. Blackwood's face appeared on the small screen. "David, Alara, I need you in the lab immediately. We may have a solution." They hurried to the research wing, where Dr. Blackwood stood before a holographic display of complex biological data. He gestured to a sleek, metallic suit hanging nearby. "We've developed a specialized suit that can mitigate the harmful effects of shape-shifting," Blackwood explained, his eyes bright with cautious optimism. "It uses a combination of nanomaterials and bioadaptive technology to support Rizian cellular structure during transformations." Alara approached the suit, her hand hovering over its surface. "This could allow me to participate in the mission safely." Blackwood nodded, but his expression remained grave. "Potentially, yes, but it requires extensive testing before we can deem it safe for long-term use. And that testing will take time. Time we may not have before the scheduled launch." David's mind raced, weighing the implications. "How long would the testing take?" "At least 3 weeks," Blackwood replied. "Maybe more." The tension in the room was palpable. A delay of that magnitude could jeopardize the entire mission, and with it, the fragile peace between humans and Rizians. Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the station. Security Chief Voss's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, we have a code red situation. The station's main power core is under attack. This is not a drill." David's comm device lit up with a flood of incoming data. His eyes widened as he processed the information. "It's the weapons dealers. They're making a last-ditch effort to sabotage the mission." He turned to Alara, conflict evident in his eyes. "I need to lead a security team to defend the power core. You should stay here, where it's safe." Alara's form solidified, her expression resolute. "No, I'm coming with you. My shape-shifting abilities could be crucial in this situation." "Alara, it's too dangerous," David protested. "Your condition is precisely why I need to do this," she interrupted. "If I can't be part of the mission, at least let me help protect it." Reluctantly, David nodded. They sprinted towards the security hub, where a mixed team of human and Rizian personnel was already assembling. "Listen up," David addressed the group. "We've got hostiles attempting to breach the main power core. Their goal is to destroy our exploration vessel and reignite hostilities between our species. We can't let that happen." He quickly outlined a strategy, leveraging the unique strengths of both human and Rizian team members. As they moved out, David couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly the two species now worked together. The corridor leading to the power core was a chaos of flashing emergency lights and the distant sound of weapons fire. David's team advanced cautiously, using Rizian's shape-shifting abilities to scout ahead and human tactical expertise to coordinate their movements. As they neared the core, Alara pulled David aside. "I have an idea," she whispered. I can infiltrate their ranks, gather intelligence on their plans. David's heart clenched with fear. Alara, no, it's too risky. Your condition is exactly why I'm the best choice for this, she insisted. They won't expect a Rizian to be involved in the defense. I can do this, David. After a moment of internal struggle, David nodded. Be careful, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Alara's form shimmered and changed, taking on the appearance of one of the weapons dealers they had encountered during their previous investigation. She slipped away, blending seamlessly with the shadows. David refocused on the task at hand, leading his team closer to the power core. The sounds of battle grew louder, punctuated by the hiss of Rizian energy weapons and the staccato bursts of human firearms. Suddenly, David's comm device buzzed. Alara's voice, strained but triumphant, came through. David, I've got their plans. They've placed explosive charges at key junctions, sending you the locations now. With this crucial intelligence, David's team was able to outmaneuver the attackers. They systematically disarmed the explosives and cornered the weapons dealers, forcing them into a desperate last stand. As the last of the hostiles were subdued, David's relief was short-lived. His comm device crackled to life again, this time with Dr. Blackwood's urgent voice. David, get to the medical bay immediately. It's Alara. David's blood ran cold. He sprinted through the station, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When he burst into the medical bay, he found Dr. Blackwood and a team of Rizian medical experts huddled around a biobed where Alara lay, her form flickering erratically. What happened? David demanded, his voice hoarse. Dr. Blackwood looked up, his face grim. The prolonged use of her abilities in a high-stress situation has caused a rapid deterioration of her condition. We're doing everything we can to stabilize her. David watched helplessly as the medical team worked, their movements a blur of activity. The monitors beeped ominously, each sound a stark reminder of how precarious Alara's situation had become. As the hours ticked by, news of the attack and Alara's sacrifice spread throughout the station. Human and Rizian leaders alike recognized the gravity of the situation. The incident had not only highlighted the risks associated with Rizian shapeshifting, but also demonstrated the power of their united front against common threats. Ambassador Stern entered the medical bay, his usually stern expression softened by concern. How is she? He asked quietly. Stable for now, Dr. Blackwood replied. But this incident has made one thing clear. We need to address the health risks associated with Rizian shapeshifting if we're to move forward with this alliance. Stern nodded thoughtfully. I've been in discussions with the Rizian High Council. They're proposing a joint research program focused on Rizian biology and the development of safeguards for shapeshifting. It could be a game-changer for our cooperation. David looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. And the mission? That's where things get complicated, Stern said. The launch date is fast approaching, and the eyes of both our peoples are on this mission. We need to decide, do we proceed as planned, or do we postpone to ensure the safety of all involved? As if on cue, one of Dr. Blackwood's assistants burst into the room, excitement evident in her voice. Doctor, we've had a breakthrough with the protective suit technology. All eyes turned to her as she explained the new developments. The room buzzed with renewed energy, but David's gaze remained fixed on Alara's still form. He knew that the decisions made in the coming days would shape not just their future, but the future of human-Rizian relations. The clock was ticking, and the weight of two worlds rested on their shoulders. As David contemplated their next move, Dr. Blackwood's assistant burst into the room, her eyes alight with excitement. We've done it, she exclaimed, breathless from her sprint. The protective suit technology, we've had a breakthrough. The atmosphere in the medical bay instantly shifted. Dr. Blackwood turned from Alara's bedside, his fatigue giving way to cautious optimism. Explain, he urged. As the assistant detailed the advancements, David felt a glimmer of hope. The new version of the suit could significantly reduce the cellular instability caused by prolonged shapeshifting. It was a game-changer, but implementing it would require a complete overhaul of the exploration vessel's life support systems. David's mind raced, weighing the implications. The launch date loomed, but the safety of the crew of Alara had to come first. He made his decision. "We're postponing the launch," he announced, his voice firm. 3 weeks. That should give us enough time to integrate this new technology. Ambassador Stern's eyebrows shot up. "Campbell, are you sure? The political ramifications are secondary to the safety of our crew," David finished. He turned to address the room. "I know this delay will be controversial, but it's the right call. We can't risk the lives of our people, human or Rizian, when we have the means to protect them." Over the next few days, David's decision sparked heated debates throughout the station. Some praised his caution, while others accused him of jeopardizing the mission's momentum. In a passionate address to both human and Rizian delegations, David defended his choice. "This mission is about more than just exploring space," he said, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "It's about proving that humans and Rizians can work together, overcome challenges together. But that means nothing if we're not willing to put the safety of our joint crew first. This delay isn't a setback, it's an investment in our shared future." His words resonated, and gradually, support for the decision grew. As the station buzzed with renewed activity, a new face arrived to spearhead the refit process. Chief Engineer Maximilian "Max" Rodriguez strode into the docking bay, his eyes immediately drawn to the sleek lines of the exploration vessel. "Well, hello, beautiful," he murmured, a grin spreading across his face. David met him at the airlock. "Chief Rodriguez, welcome aboard. We're on a tight schedule." "Call me Max," the engineer interrupted, already heading towards the ship. "And don't worry about the schedule. I've got some ideas that'll make your head spin." True to his word, Max's unorthodox approach to problem-solving proved invaluable. He worked tirelessly, bridging the gap between human and Rizian technologies with an ease that amazed both species. Under his guidance, the refit progressed faster than anyone had dared hope. While the ship underwent its transformation, David spent every free moment in the medical bay with Alara. Her recovery was slow, and he could see the frustration in her eyes as she struggled to maintain her form. "What if I'm not ready?" she whispered one evening, her hand trembling slightly in his. "What if I can't be part of the mission?" David squeezed her hand gently. "Then we'll face that together. But don't give up hope yet. You're stronger than you know." As they talked about their future and the potential impact of their relationship on human-Rizian relations, David felt both exhilarated and terrified. They were charting unknown territory, personally and politically. Meanwhile, Ambassador Stern and High Counselor Zaxelor seized the opportunity presented by the delay. They organized joint training exercises for the human and Rizian crew members, designed to foster teamwork and understanding between the two species. David watched with pride as human and Rizian officers worked side by side in simulated emergency scenarios. Each challenge required the unique strengths of both species to overcome, and with each success, the bonds between crew members grew stronger. As the new launch date approached, the station hummed with anticipation. But the weapons dealer faction had one last card to play. In the early hours of the morning, alarms blared throughout the station. "Security breach in the mainframe," a voice shouted over the intercom. "We're detecting a virus in the system." David raced to the control room, where a team of human and Rizian computer experts were already hard at work. Screens flickered with cascading lines of code as they fought to isolate the virus. "It's adaptive," one of the Rizian technicians reported, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "Every time we think we've cornered it, it shifts and attacks a new system." David's mind raced. They needed a new approach, something the virus couldn't anticipate. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He sprinted to the medical bay, where Alara was already sitting up, alerted by the alarms. "Alara," he panted, "I know you're not fully recovered, but we need your help. Your shape-shifting abilities, could you interface directly with the station's computer systems?" Alara's eyes widened as she grasped his plan. "It's risky," she said, "but I think I can do it." Back in the control room, Alara placed her hands on the main console. Her form shimmered and seemed to melt into the interface. On the screens, a new presence appeared in the virtual environment of the mainframe. A glowing, Rizian-shaped avatar, navigating through the streams of data. "I can see it," Alara's voice echoed through the speakers, sounding distant and strange. "The virus, it's not just code. It's almost alive." For tense minutes, they watched as Alara's avatar chased the virus through the virtual landscape of the mainframe. Finally, with a burst of energy, she cornered and neutralized it. As Alara's form solidified once more, the control room erupted in cheers. Human and Rizian alike celebrated their joint victory. The last-ditch effort of the weapons dealers had not only failed but had brought the two species closer together than ever. In the aftermath of the attack, support for the mission soared among both humans and Rizians. The incident had demonstrated the incredible potential of combining human technology with Rizian biological abilities, opening up exciting new avenues for research and cooperation. As the final launch preparations began, David and Alara found themselves facing a difficult decision. Alara's health had improved, but she was still not at full strength. They stood together on the observation deck, watching as the gleaming exploration vessel was moved into its launch position. "I want to go," Alara said softly, her gaze fixed on the ship. "But I'm afraid, David. What if I'm not strong enough?" David turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But remember, your strength isn't just in your ability to shapeshift. It's in your courage, your intelligence, your heart. Those are the qualities that make you an invaluable part of this mission." As they stood at this crossroads, the weight of their decision heavy on their shoulders, David and Alara knew that their choice would impact not only their personal lives, but the future of human-Rizian relations. The eyes of both species were upon them, waiting to see what the next chapter in this interstellar partnership would bring. The eyes of both species were upon them, waiting to see what the next chapter in this interstellar partnership would unfold. Alara took a deep breath, her form shimmering slightly as she gathered her dedication. "I'm going," she said, her voice steady. "This mission is bigger than just me. It's about showing what we can achieve together." David nodded, a mix of pride and concern etched on his face. "All right, but promise me you'll use the new protective suit at all times. We can't take any chances." As launch day arrived, the station buzzed with an electric energy. Crowds gathered in the observation lounges, their faces pressed against the windows as the sleek exploration vessel, newly christened Harmony, sat poised for departure. In the pre-launch chamber, David and Alara stood side by side, their hands clasped tightly. Around them, human and Rizian crew members made final preparations, their movements a synchronous dance of efficiency. Ambassador Stern approached, his usual stern expression replaced by one of genuine warmth. "Commander Campbell, Liaison Alara," he said, "on behalf of Earth, I wish you safe travels and successful discoveries." High Counselor Zaxelor joined them, his iridescent scales shimmering under the chamber's lights. "May your journey bring enlightenment to both our peoples," he intoned solemnly. As they boarded the ship, David and Alara paused at the airlock. They turned to each other, their eyes conveying volumes of unspoken emotion. Without a word, they embraced, their forms melding together in a symbolic union of their two species. The launch itself was a breathtaking spectacle. As Harmony rose majestically from its berth, cheers erupted throughout the station. The ship's sleek form grew smaller against the star-studded backdrop of space, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of two worlds. The first week of the journey passed without incident, the crew settling into their routines and marveling at the wonders of deep space. But as they entered the second week, alarms blared through the ship's corridors. "Uncharted asteroid field dead ahead," Max's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands, brace for evasive maneuvers." David raced to the bridge, his heart pounding. Through the view screen, he saw a sea of tumbling rocks, some as large as small moons. "Status report," he barked. "Shields holding at 80%, but we can't take much more of this," Max replied, his fingers flying over the control panels. "We need to reinforce them, fast." Beside him, Zara, Max's Rizian counterpart, worked with equal intensity. "I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems," she reported, her form flickering slightly with the effort of maintaining her humanoid shape. As the ship shuddered under the impact of smaller asteroids, David made a snap decision. Alara, he called over the comm, we need you outside. Can you use your abilities to reinforce the hull? There was a moment of hesitation before Alara's voice came through, dedication evident in her tone. I'm on it. Minutes later, through the external cameras, David watched as Alara's form emerged from an airlock. Protected by her new suit, she spread herself over the ship's surface, her body morphing to create an additional layer of protection. For tense hours, the crew worked in perfect harmony. Max and Zara's combined expertise kept the ship's systems running, while David's steady leadership guided them through the treacherous field. Outside, Alara's shape-shifting abilities proved invaluable, her form constantly adapting to absorb impacts and repair damage in real time. As they finally cleared the asteroid field, a collective sigh of relief echoed through the ship. David allowed himself a small smile. They had faced their first major challenge and emerged stronger for it. The following days were filled with anticipation as they neared their destination. Long-range scans of the planet revealed more than they had ever hoped for. Commander, you need to see this, the science officer called, excitement evident in her voice. David leaned over the console, his eyes widening as he took in the data. Are those structures? The officer nodded, her fingers dancing over the holographic display. Artificial constructions, sir. And they're old. Really old. As the planet grew larger in their view screen, a palpable sense of excitement spread through the crew. They were on the verge of a discovery that could reshape their understanding of the universe. The descent to the planet's surface proved to be yet another test of their abilities. As the landing craft bucked and shuddered in the turbulent atmosphere, David gripped the controls, his squeezing hard with effort. The atmospheric composition is unlike anything we've encountered, he grunted, fighting to keep the craft stable. I'm not sure we can maintain control. Beside him, Alara's eyes narrowed in concentration. Without a word, she placed her hands on the craft's walls. Her form began to shimmer and flow, extending beyond the confines of her suit. David watched in amazement as Alara's body reshaped itself, forming an additional stabilizer that extended from the craft's exterior. With this new appendage, she helped to steady their descent, allowing David to guide them to a safe landing. As the dust settled around them, David turned to Alara, awe and gratitude in his eyes. That was incredible, he breathed. Alara smiled, her form still rippling slightly as she returned to her normal shape. We're a team, she said simply. Now, let's see what this planet has to show us. As they stepped out onto the alien world's surface, the ruins of an ancient civilization stretched out before them. Towering structures of an unfamiliar metal alloy reached towards the sky, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The exploration team moved forward cautiously, their sensors sweeping the area for any signs of danger. But as they delved deeper into the ruins, it became clear that whatever civilization had built this place had long since vanished. Look at this, one of the Ridgeon scientists called out, gesturing towards a wall covered in complex symbols. These markings, they seem to depict a merging of biological and technological elements. David studied the images, a sense of wonder growing within him. It's almost as if they found a way to fully integrate organic life with advanced technology, he mused. Reminds me of what we're trying to achieve with our own alliance. As they pressed on, the team found themselves in a vast chamber at the heart of the ruins. In the center stood a pulsing orb of energy, its surface rippling with colors they had no names for. Incredible, Alara whispered, stepping closer to the orb. The energy readings from this artifact are off the charts. Suddenly the orb flared to life, bathing the chamber in brilliant light. Before anyone could react, a beam of energy shot out, enveloping Alara in its radiance. Alara! David shouted, rushing forward. But as quickly as it had begun, the light faded, leaving Alara standing unharmed, but changed. Her form shimmered and flowed with a new fluidity, her eyes alight with an inner fire. When she spoke, her voice resonated with a newfound power. David, she said, wonder in her tone, I can see everything. As Alara explained the transformation she had undergone, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the ancient walls, dust and debris raining down around them. The chamber's collapsing, Max yelled over the growing rumble. We need to get out of here. But Alara stood calmly amidst the chaos, her hands outstretched. To David's amazement, the falling debris began to slow, then stop entirely, suspended in midair. I can control it, Alara said, her voice filled with awe. The energy from the orb, it's allowed me to manipulate matter at its most fundamental level. With graceful movements, Alara began to reshape the collapsing chamber. Walls reinforced themselves, cracks sealed shut, and a clear path to safety formed before their eyes. As the team made their way back to the surface, David couldn't take his eyes off Alara. She moved with a new confidence, her form constantly shifting and adapting to their surroundings. Once safely aboard their ship, Alara turned to David, her eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. David, she said softly, I can see you, truly see you, in a way I never could before. The complexity, the beauty of your very atoms. It's breathtaking. David reached out, taking her hand in his. As their fingers intertwined, he felt a connection deeper than anything he had experienced before. In that moment, he understood that their journey together was not nearly finished. It was, in many ways, just beginning. As Harmony prepared for its return journey, the crew buzzed with excitement over their discoveries. The data they had gathered would keep scientists on both Earth and Rizia busy for years to come. But for David and Alara, the most profound discovery was the new dimension their relationship had taken on. Standing on the observation deck, they watched as the alien planet receded into the distance. Alara's form shimmered slightly, adapting to the subtle vibrations of the ship. What do you think this means for us? David asked, his voice quiet. For humans and Rizians? Alara turned to him, a smile playing on her ever-changing features. I think it means the possibilities are endless, she replied. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of what we can achieve together. As they set course for home, David couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that together they were ready to face them. The ugly prejudices that had once defined their relationship had been transformed into something beautiful. A partnership that held the potential to reshape the future of both their species. The stars streaked by outside the view screen, each one a promise of new discoveries to come. For David and Alara, and for the united crew of Harmony, this was not an end, but a new beginning. Their journey into the unknown continued, buoyed by the strength of their newfound unity and the limitless potential of their combined abilities.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.